somewhere in these hallowed grounds is the body of Henry Davis. That was brought. Tell again, give us that path, the last path.
James, what happened was Henry Davis was murdered he was taken from a jail on Calvert Street. He was paraded through the black community in Annapolis, taken to Asbury United Methodist Church, which is a predominantly African-American church. People were allowed to gawk at him and to see him. He was then taken near St. John's College, which is in downtown Annapolis, and he was hung from a chestnut tree. But because of his weight, the branch broke and he did not die from the lynching. When the white mob determined that he was not dead, they literally shot him over 100 times, mutilated his body, and an enterprising white man took a photograph of this gruesome sight, converted it into a postcard, and then sold those postcards for a profit. The purpose of that photograph being taken was twofold. One was to warn other blacks that should they assault a white woman, this could be their fate. And the second reason was to make money, which is the underlining principles, of course, of slavery and Jim Crow. Oppress people for $1.
But you said despite that, nobody ever was brought to justice and nobody saw anything.
That's correct. There were over 50 people who were part of the mob. In April of 1907, a grand jury was convened. Witnesses were brought forward. All of them indicated that no one saw the perpetrators who committed the crime, and every one of them were no one was brought to trial as a result of it.
So in terms of his burial, what do we know? Did they just dump his body here, or they bury?
It's called a pauper grave. Pauper grave. It's an unmarked grave. Somewhere on this vast cemetery is Henry Davis. He's buried. No one knows exactly where he's buried. He was buried without any religious ceremony and put here.
Look at that right here.
This is the memorial, the Henry Davis Memorial. This was the last man lynched in the city of Annapolis. He was lynched on December 21st, 1906. This memorial is dedicated to all of the victims of lynchings in the state of Maryland. And this is the list of people who've been lynched. Asbury Green, Centerville, Maryland; James Taylor, Chestertown; Isaac Kemp, Princess Anne; Stephen Williams, Prince George's County; Marsha E. Price, Caroline County; Jacob Henson, Howard County; James Brown, Frederick; William Andrews, Princess Anne; Garfield, Salisbury, Maryland; and of course, Henry Davis here in Annapolis, Maryland.
And talk about why it was important to remember Mr. Davis 4 days before Christmas.
Henry Davis, who was lynched 4 days before Christmas, never had a trial. The people who murdered him were never brought to justice. And as Dr. King once said, we will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the hateful words and actions of the good people, but the appalling silence of the good people. And so we wanted to make sure that Henry Davis was not forgotten. There was a memorial services last night for him. And we've now seen a recurrence of these nooses that's coming up. I want to remind people why a noose is similar to a swastika. This is an incredible story. This is the last man that was executed in Annapolis, who happened to be an African American. And it turned out 80 years later, he would be pardoned by Governor Paris Glendenning because the commission concluded that he did not murder the person that he was put to death for. And in this was an excerpt from his last statement. He said, "I've been in prison and now I'm about to shake hands with time and welcome eternity. For in a few hours from now, I shall step out of time into eternity to pay the penalty of a crime I'm not guilty of." This is the last statement that he dictated before they put him to death. Right, not only are their attitudes, we see white supremacy is not dead. It's far from it. And it's on the rise again. And what we need to do is remind people why white nationalism and white supremacy is something that we should be very concerned about, because it ultimately leads to people's deaths.
You think about the journey from lynchings to equal opportunities, Dr. King. Why is it important that young people and people need to know this lesson?
Because they need to understand they stand on the shoulders of courageous men and women who made possible some of the opportunities they have today. And these men and women were able to do remarkable things when there were less opportunities. So I find great inspiration in a memorial like this. And what I like about this memorial, the Civil Rights Foot Soldiers Memorial, it is not about the famous. It's about nondescript men and women, barbers, butchers, maids, teachers, police
Ordinary
officers,
people.
just ordinary people who did an extraordinary thing. They were able to, by their very presence, demonstrate what a united group of people can do.